Again, my name is Lucy Salcido Carter, and I'm the Policy Director at Cal Nonprofits. And today's webinar is about the California Relief Grant Program. And in particular, we're going to be doing a Q&A with some of our Lendistry partners. So we're really excited to focus on your questions and get as many answers as we can to as many of your questions as we can. So I just wanted to say a couple of things about Cal Nonprofits. We're really pleased to be an application partner for this grant program. We're a policy alliance of more than 10,000 nonprofit organizations, and we are the voice of the nonprofit community in California. We advocate for nonprofits with state legislators, the state administration, so the governor's office and other administrative agencies, and other elected officials. And we advocate across a range of policy issues that affect nonprofits across a range of fields. And during COVID-19, we have in particular been focusing on making sure that relief programs for for-profits, that there are comparable relief programs for nonprofit organizations as well. And we've been advocating very strongly with a set of partners of other nonprofit allies and also key legislative allies to help ensure that nonprofits are included in this particular grant program. So it's the result of our joint advocacy efforts that we are part of this current grant program. As an application partner, we will continue our advocacy working with Lendistry and with Cal OSBA, the lead agency on the grant program, to help get the answers to your questions and also to work on the process and help ensure a nonprofit-friendly process for you. So again, we're really grateful for our partnership with Lendistry. They are the contracted intermediary for the grant program, and we're grateful to Cal Office of Small Business Advocate for their leadership in the grant program. We recognize that there have been some technological challenges with the application process and that it has been confusing, particularly for nonprofits. So many more people have been wanting to log on and complete the application process than the system was originally prepared for. But we know that Lendistry is really working hard to make sure that as many people as possible can log on and apply for this grant program. So we appreciate that. There are also the obvious capacity issues about the amount of funding that the grant program has. We know that the $475 million, so sounds like a lot, will not be enough for every organization who has a need to get funding in these two grant cycles that are part of this round. But it is one of the things that Cal Nonprofits does, that we will continue to advocate for additional funding sources so that more nonprofits as well as small businesses can access relief funding. So we will also keep offering you webinars like the one today. We heard from you that you still had unanswered questions, and we wanted to make sure that we could get to as many of those as possible. So with that, I want to introduce our presenters for today's webinar. From Lendistry, we have Janet Berezhensky, who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. And we also have Trevor Schickman. He is the lead business advisor for The Center by Lendistry. They will be answering your questions today. From Cal Nonprofits, we have our program manager for this grant program, Sue Sigler, who will be asking your questions today and moderating the Q&A. And we also have our CEO, Jan Masaoka, who will be helping to field questions today and who is going to make some comments now. So Jan, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you now.
Thanks very much, Lucy, and thanks Janet and Trevor for being on this. I mean, we really do appreciate the access that people have to Lendistry. I know all of you are thinking to yourself, can we just get to what to do about when it says document pending upload? All right, but I want to steal 60 seconds of your time to do a little bit to kind of set this in a broader context, which Lucy already did a great job of pointing out the importance of nonprofits being part of programs like this, and that it's nonprofit advocacy that has brought that about. It didn't just, legislators didn't just wake up up one day and go like, oh yeah, nonprofits are important too. And I want to remind us all that, we tend to, and this program has focused our attention on what we do for communities. But let's also just remember what an economic power we are. So the fact is, nonprofits in California generate 15% of the gross domestic product of our state. 1 in every 14 jobs is in California is at a nonprofit. So we are not just important service providers, we are also important employers in important parts of the economy. And as we keep saying in the legislature every 10 minutes or so, nonprofits every year bring in $40 billion into California from out of state. Right. And so we are not using up money. Okay. We are generating money for California and for California communities. So it only makes sense for us to be included in a program like this. It should really be about nonprofits and small business instead of for small business. Oh yeah, and nonprofits too, because of the fact that we are job creators and economic powerhouse, as well as service providers. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the future. And when I say the future here, I mean Wednesday, okay, or Thursday, because the fact is that this first round of funding is closing on Wednesday, 1 minute before midnight. So on Thursday, many people will still have time to complete their applications. It won't be considered for round 1, but your application won't have disappeared. You can complete it for round 2, or they'll be starting a new application, or others may just be waiting to hear that even though they've been deemed eligible, they haven't heard yet whether they've been awarded. But I want you to remember that in something like the first 4 hours in which this program was open, they received 14,000 applications. So that says that not everybody is going to get funded, but it also says what a tremendous need there is from both the small business and the nonprofit community. So we really want to encourage you to apply, and we want to help you to apply, because we think it's very important for us to be making the statement about nonprofit need and nonprofit interest, as well as bringing money into through this program. The other thing is there are a lot of bills right now with new money coming up. Some of it is specific to the arts, some of it is specific to healthcare, but a lot of it needs to be open to nonprofits, and some of those things have not happened yet. So I'm going to ask you just to put on your to-do list is also to stay in touch with us at Cal Nonprofits, because we will be alerting you about what the next opportunities are for funding, so that we can all make sure that nonprofits are included, and are included, from the beginning, so that the application process doesn't end up being as a little bit of a culture shock as this particular one has been. So thanks very much. I'm going to stay online, and as Lucy mentioned, help to answer questions. Okay.
Dan?
On to the main event.
Dan, this is Lucy. Right before we get to Sue, I just wanted to let all the participants know you will be getting a link to the recording and to the slides from this presentation. So you don't have to take a lot of notes now. You will be getting, again, a link to the recording and all. We don't have a lot of slides, but the slides that we do have will have some resources for you on them. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sue.
Thank you, Lucy. And once again, welcome, Janet and Trevor. We're really pleased to have you with us today. I know that you all are very, very busy. I wanted to start out today. We're going to have a lot of questions for Janet and Trevor, and we're going to get through as many of the questions in the chat as we can. And we've selected our questions for some of the most popular questions that we get. And I just wanted to start out by reminding everyone that there is a list of frequently asked questions on our website. Many people can find the answers to their questions there. And so please be sure that you've read through that. It will be really, really helpful as you move forward in your in your application. And so also want to acknowledge that the application does not look like what we typically see for nonprofit organizations. So we want to acknowledge that it does come from a small business perspective, that those of you who are experienced in completing grant applications, especially in nonprofits, we are really trained to tell our stories, and this application doesn't give you an opportunity to do that. There's no narrative section, and so not to worry about that. One of the things that I understand, and Janet and Trevor, if I misspeak in any way, please jump right in, because I know you guys have your fingers on the pulse of the latest and greatest information. But I've talked to a lot of organizations who are concerned that they don't get a chance to describe their services, and this application is not going to be considered in a competitive environment with respect to the merits of the work that you do. It is the case that if you qualify, you will be considered for funding, and also acknowledged that there are likely to be far more applications than can be funded in both of the rounds. So we need to acknowledge that too. I also want to send everybody to careliefgrant.com, where there are also a list of frequently asked questions, and there are videos that you can view for technical assistance that will help you get through your application. But I'm going to turn now to Trevor and Janet, and start with some of our most frequently asked questions. So we know we have to acknowledge that there have been some tech issues with the website, that the website has generated enormous amounts of traffic. And I'm guessing that you all prepared for a lot, but it probably was even more than Lendistry anticipated. And so could you maybe touch on what some of the common questions that you're getting, or the common problems that you're hearing from people with regard to navigating their way through the website? I do know that last week, a lot of the problems that I was hearing, those have been resolved. But what tips or information would you have for people around navigating the website?
Of course, and thank you, Sue, and thank you everyone from Cal Nonprofits. We're really happy to partner with you all. To answer that question, I think that the most common challenges that applicants are having is how to access their application once they've applied. The most important thing to do is when you go to www.calreliefgrant.com is that you make sure which partner you are applying through. So when you apply, you have the option to pick a county in which you're located in, or language. And so the important thing is that you know which partner you apply through, because your application is linked to that partner itself. And so that's how we locate your application. So it's important to do that. Another thing is when you're applying, right? So you go, say, for example, you chose Cal Nonprofits as your partner, that's where you're going to apply through, and you accidentally applied as a for-profit business instead of a nonprofit. So now we have your for-profit application, and you are like, okay, what do I do? I'm a nonprofit. I accidentally applied for profit. At this point, Lendistry can see your application. However, you will have to go back in and start a new application under the nonprofit section. And so once you get in there and you begin your application, the common thing is, did I submit my application, right? Did they receive my application? So there's two things. So when you're filling out your application, and I apologize to everyone if my camera is blurry, when you go in there and you begin your application, you'll see questions about, and we'll talk a little bit more about that because I know there's going to be questions about the questions on the application, is that you're going through the application and you decide, I'm going to finish this application later. So you click on save and close, right? And then the other option is that you actually complete the application and you click on confirm and then you type in yes. That means you completed your application. So now you've hit save and close, or you've hit yes and confirm. And then you want to go back into your application. Well, you need to go back to that same link from Cal Nonprofits that you applied through, that portal section, right? You log in, and then when your application appears, you see pending document upload, right? So what does that mean? That's the biggest question. What does that mean? That means that you actually submitted your application. That means that you hit confirm and you type yes. So now you have to upload your documents, right? The other thing is you may see is incomplete. If you see incomplete, That does not mean that you didn't upload your documentation. That just means that you forgot to hit confirm and type in yes in the beginning, right? Because I said you can do two things. I said you can either hit confirm and type in yes. That means you completed your application, you submitted it, or you can put save and close. So when you log into your portal and you see your application, it says incomplete, that just means that you didn't properly submit your application. So you need to go in there and click edit application, complete the application, hit confirm, type in yes. Okay, so now you typed in yes, you hit confirm. So now I would recommend just once you hit confirm and type in yes, now you have the option to upload your documents. So go ahead and upload your documents. You'll see complete or pending. So complete will be in green if you uploaded the documents properly. So say you uploaded your documents. Now you logged out, right? So now you want to say, okay, let me just double check if I did everything right. You go back into the Cal Nonprofits link, the portal that you applied through, right? You go in there and now you see pending documentation. And then you said, well, I uploaded my documentation. Why is it still sending pending? Well, it's still going to say pending because there's a second process stage. It's called stage 2, where you have to upload your banking information. We do not need you to do that. That is not a requirement. So it's still going to say pending, but as long as you uploaded your documents and you completed your applications, you're okay. So if it says pending, that is okay. You do not need to complete your banking. So if you log in and it says pending, that means, hey, let me check if I uploaded my documents, or pending, that means that you have completed your application and you uploaded your documents. And then the other one is if you log in and it says incomplete, that means that you didn't submit your application. You didn't click confirm and type in yes.
Janet, thank you for that. I just want to clarify a couple of points. So you mentioned going back in through the partner portal to continue an application or to check on an application. Last week we were guided that it was really important for people to go back to the email that they received about their password and use that link to return. Is it okay to do it either way, or now should people return to the partner portal?
So what I found is that you can do it either way. We recommend the first way. If the second way that I just suggested is not working, we do want them to go back to the link, but I think there's a potential they can log in through the original as long as they select the partner in which they had originally applied through. Great,
thank you for that. And you know, a lot of people did get to save and close their application, and so I know at the end of and they're ready to upload documents. So we've been getting a lot of questions about document upload over the last couple of days, and I know at the end of last week our guidance was that folks needed to wait until they got an email invitation to come to the site to upload their documents. But it sounds to me like maybe there's been some catching up over the weekend. So can folks go directly into their application and begin the upload of the documents, or do they still need to wait to get that email?
No, at this point, all applicants should have received an email to upload documents. If you did not find that email, feel free to check your spam, but you can always access your application. And if you submitted it correctly, you should be able to upload your documents that are required.
Super, thank you. And one of our other most frequently asked questions today is when our nonprofit people are very thorough, and they like confirmation on things being done. So I'm getting questions about, will we get a confirmation when our application is complete or submitted, or can you address that for us, please?
Yes, of course. So you can always log into your portal account and verify if your application is complete. However, Lendistry will be sending out emails after January 13th, once the application period is closed, to ensure that those who are selected and are eligible, they'll receive an email and they'll begin stage 2 of the process. So everyone will receive an email after the closing date, which is January 13th, this Wednesday.
Super. And I know we heard on our Zoom meeting this morning, and I want to share with everyone, I've heard from some panicked folks about, oh no, document uploads, and they were having trouble. A couple of things. One is that if folks submit their application, meaning filling out the part they fill out, but have not yet uploaded any documents, that is still eligible for consideration in round one. And that folks, if they didn't get to upload documents or there are documents missing, those will be requested during the application review process. We heard that this morning. Is that still the correct information?
That is still the correct information. So as long as you submit your application, which you confirm and type in yes, you will still be considered for round one. So say, for example, you applied, but you didn't finish your application. You do not have to apply again for round two. Just go into your account, complete the application, submit your documents, and then you'll be considered for round two. For those who submitted their application in round one, but didn't upload the documents, we will send you an email to upload your documentation, and we'll have a Lendistry team member contact you.
Super. And I also hear a lot of people looking around the site for the application certification. So we want to mention to people that when you go in to upload your documents, that comes up at that time. It's something that pops up for you, and you have to either print it out and scan it back, or download it, fill it out, and upload it back with your documents. And it does not require a wet signature, correct? It's you sign on the computer in the right field, correct?
Correct. And you can also find the application certification on the CA Relief Grant website under application tips, and that's tip number 5, I believe. So you can begin working on that beforehand.
And then I'd like to touch on the banking information for a moment, if we might. And some folks are telling me that they've been able to upload their banking information, and we want to reiterate that for folks, that's not something that's not something we always do during nonprofit application. So you do need your account number and your password in order to be able to provide that information to Lendistry. But that doesn't need to be provided in order for your application to be complete, correct? If during the application review process, or after an application has been successful through the process, that folks will be contacted to load their bank information. Is that correct?
So that is correct. So for round one, we're only requiring the application and the documents that we're requiring. You do not need to complete the banking information or that banking step. So it's important that you don't need to do that. If you did, that's okay. We'll be contacting eligible applicants after the application round has closed to complete their banking once they're selected.
Thank you. And just a few more tech tips for people. I know I've heard it over and over again. Please be sure you're accessing the application in Chrome, that you really need to use Chrome as your browser, or you're going to encounter some technical difficulties through the application. We also heard this morning that when it gets to uploading documents, some folks are having some difficulty, and so you might want to think about clearing your cache if that's happening, and trying again. And then lastly, with respect to uploading documents, I know that I heard from folks who were getting messages that they had a document that was too big. Some of those 990 forms are really long. And so, so our advice this morning, we heard, was either to compress that document, if you know how to do that, or to divide it in two and upload it as 2 separate documents. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so my tip for this is, if you divide it into 2 documents, just label it. So tax return part 1, tax return part 2, so we know what it is.
That's going to make life easier for the grant reviewers, for sure. I want to pivot for just a moment and review some of the eligibility and criteria. And so just for folks who are tuning in today, eligible organizations are those that are organized under IRS chapters 501c3, C6, and C19. And also, if you look at the eligibility criteria, it says that religious institutions are specifically excluded from this funding. But we also know in nonprofits that a lot of communities of faith also operate social services. So if you have questions about whether that's eligible, I'd like to refer you to our FAQs, which goes into detail a little bit more like that. But the short answer is that if you have services that are organized, or if you have community services that you're providing, say you had a nursery school or a food pantry, and those services have a separate 501c3, they are certainly eligible. And then we also heard that if the religious institution has 51% or more of its revenue involved with those social services as opposed to activities around practicing the faith, that those organizations could qualify as well. Can you confirm that?
Yes. So a religious or faith-based organization is eligible only if 50% of the total gross revenue is generated from the school daycare.
Thank you. You know, I mentioned earlier that that a lot of the questions are not the ones that nonprofit organizations usually see. I want to review for a moment. I have to say the number one question I've gotten through this whole process has to do with ownership. And I want to say that Lendistry understands that no one owns nonprofit organizations. And so I've been asked often who should fill out the application, and the guidance that we've received is that the executive director is preferred as the applicant/owner. However, Lendistry knows that they don't get to tell nonprofit organizations who is authorized to apply on their behalf. So anyone, volunteer or staff who is authorized by the organization to apply for funding on their behalf can list themselves as the owner/applicant. After that, you get asked a question about what percentage does this person own of the business. And again, we've been advised to fill in 100%, but Lendistry understands again that no one owns a nonprofit organization. And we've had the case where maybe in larger organizations that staff go in to review the application and begin, and they type in their name and it auto-populates and they go, oh no, because I was just sort of taking a look around, but I'm really going to fill this out with my executive director's information. And so if I've started an application and I put in my name and that was an error, what should I do then?
At that point, you would contact a Lendistry team member, or contact the Lendistry team member, or feel free to email careliefgrant@lendistry.com, and we'll have a team member go ahead and make those edits for you.
Thank you. That's great. I also want to touch on the personal data and information, because again, that's real unusual for nonprofit organizations. And just want to, I get that question a lot. Do I really have to put in my social security number and date of birth to apply? And we know that that answer is yes. Folks do have to put in their social security number. And I've been asked a lot, well, what's going to happen with that? And we are informed that it's going to be used to verify identity, that it is a fraud prevention measure. Is there anything else that you would want to share with us about how that data is to be used or protected?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it is used to confirm identity, and also we pull what's called an office, it's called the Office of Foreign Assets Control, and it's called OFAC, and we give detail in the application certification on what specifically that is. And so you'll find more information on the application certification.
Sure, thank you.
I just wanted to jump in here. Excuse me for interrupting. This is
sure.
We're getting a lot of background noise, and we're hearing from participants that it's getting a little bit in the way of their ability to hear. So I don't know. You two are the ones who are off mute. So sorry to put you both on the spot. But if there is background noise, if there's anything you can do about it, we'd really appreciate it.
I think I'm having a work from home problem. I put my cats in the bedroom and they're rattling the door, so I do apologize. If it happens again, I'll excuse myself for a moment and take care of that. Thank you for letting me know, Lucy.
Sure, maybe just speak a little more loudly, Sue. That'd be great.
Okay, I thought
Thank
since I was in the microphone that might not pick that up. My apologies.
We love cats. It's not that. All right. Thanks, Sue.
And so, so Janet, I'll go on to say, you know, we've talked a lot in our calls about how some of those drop-down menus that ask us to choose business categories, that ask us to look up an NAICS number. Folks are nervous because they don't fit neatly into those boxes, and folks are afraid if they choose other that they're not going to be eligible. So I'm going to go take care of those cats and ask if you would address that while I do. Thank you.
Of course, thanks, Sue. And we love cats, so that's good. So in regards to the NAICS code, I understand that some of the NAICS codes provided, and you have the option when you're applying, there's a little link there to take you to the NAICS code page where it helps you select the NAICS code that is best relates to the services that you provide. I know it may not be a perfect fit, but just please try to select the one that is closely related to your organization and the services that you provide. At the end of the day, our organization and our underwriters who are reviewing your application, there will be some research done. So we can go look at your websites. We can see the services that you provide as well.
Thanks so much. I think that's really helpful. Those have caused a lot of anxiety for our folks. I'll also throw in that I get a lot of questions about what does B2B and B2C mean, and that would be business to business and business to consumer. And by and large, virtually all our nonprofits, I do believe, are involved in business to consumer. Is that how you would define that?
That is correct. That is business to consumer, correct. And if you work with other organizations, then it would be business to business.
Great, thank you. I know, for example, some food banks exclusively provide food to community-based organizations, so that might be a business to business. But if you're providing services to people, then that would be business to consumer. Also, we have the 4 priorities that are listed: food provision, emergency housing, childcare, workforce development, and folks express some concerns. Well, what if I don't fit into those categories? Am I still eligible? Could you address that?
Yes, applicants will still be eligible, and remember the applications on a need basis. So we're looking at several factors of the application, and just because maybe you don't fall into that factor, you may fall into another factor. So just keep that in mind. I encourage everyone to apply.
Super. And then there's that question about the 25% of your revenue being in one of those categories. And once again, if you answer no to that question, it doesn't mean you're not eligible, right? Okay. Moving on to folks have had some difficulty with the race, ethnicity, and demographic questions. If I was a small business owner, it would be clear that we were asking for my data. But when I'm in an organization that has, a number of people on the board of directors and maybe a number of people in senior staff, how should people answer that question about the owner's identity?
I think you can think about it in regards to the staff members. If you have, more than 51% of your staff is female, or 51% of your staff is people of color, minorities, that's something that you can utilize to answer those questions. Or say, for example, your organization is ran by a woman, that's something that we can consider as well.
Okay, super. And the demographic questions would apply to the people the nonprofit organization serves, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm gonna also mention that the guidance that we've received, folks ask a lot about the question about if you've received other forms of COVID-related assistance, particularly a PPP loan or EIDL funding. And there's a drop-down menu that asks you to choose one or the other. And in a lot of cases, folks have received both. So our guidance has been that from the drop-down menu, choose the one that is the larger amount of the awards that you've received. And in the amount, enter the combined amount, and then just attach the briefest list of what you received and the amounts as a document to be uploaded. Is that still the right thing for us to tell folks?
That is correct. And when you upload that document with the specifics of the amount and the grant that you received, I recommend titling it grants received, and then in the upload section, it gives you a list of, what document you're going to be uploading. You can upload that under miscellaneous, and then just title your document grants received. That way, when an underwriter is looking at your uploaded document, they can quickly locate and understand what that document is. So just grants received and upload under miscellaneous.
Great. I wanted to move on just to folks who are questions that I received about how to calculate your gross revenue for purposes of ensuring that your organization falls in between that $1,000 a year revenue and the $2.5 million a year revenue. That's the range that you need to fall into in order to qualify for this program. And our guidance has been that if you file a Form 990 to look to your 2019 990 and look to line 12, your gross revenues, which is what will inform Lendistry if you qualify in that regard or not. But then we know a lot of smaller organizations don't file a full 990. And if you file something alternative like a 990N, Lendistry already knows that you're a smaller organization. You fall under the 2.5 million cap because you didn't hit the requirement for the 990. So we'll be looking for something that shows that you have at least $1,000 in annual revenue. And there's some guidance on our frequently asked questions about that on the website about what might suffice as an alternative. And I also get the question a lot about a lot of nonprofits were very fortunate that as the COVID impacts became apparent, there were a lot of generous folks who stepped up to the plate, and maybe you had to really double or triple your efforts, and you got some funding to do that. So I get questions about if you had some extraordinary income in a given year, either due to COVID or maybe even as far back as 2019, you ran a capital campaign or got an extraordinarily large gift in a given year. I get questions about, can those things be backed out of your gross revenues for purposes of qualifying for the grant? And I want to share with everybody listening today that the answer on that is no, that Lendistry will be looking at your 2019, ideally, gross revenue from your 990. And some folks have also asked questions about well, for one reason or another, my 2019 990 isn't available. Can I use 2018? And I've heard Lendistry say yes, and that's very flexible. Thank you for that. That's really being flexible. And so, and again, if you need to explain something to make it really as brief as possible, 1-2 sentences, no more than a paragraph, and you can upload that with your documents. So that's what we've been hearing. I've also got a lot of questions from folks who are kind of in transition. We know that the grant regulations say that you have to have been operating prior to June 1, 2019 in order to qualify. And so when I say some organizations in transition, that means maybe you were converting from a nonprofit to a for-profit or vice versa, and that was happening sometime in that time period from June 1, 2019 to now. And as I have looked for guidance, again, I want to say thanks so much for the flexibility. The answers that I've received are, show us what happened. Lendistry is looking to try to qualify people, not trying to keep them out of the process. But that business continuity is an important concept, that you need to be able to show that you were in business prior to June 1, 2019, and that you've been continuing in business. If you're currently a nonprofit, I believe you're supposed to use the nonprofit application. If you're in the process of applying to be a nonprofit but haven't yet gotten your 501c3, that you should use the small business application. Is that correct?
So yes, that is correct. If you have not gotten your 501c3, you can apply as a for-profit business, correct?
Great. I also wanted to highlight that some folks might have started, and you touched on this earlier, Janet, but worth talking about again, that some folks started one application and went, oh no, I changed my mind about which one I should have been applying for, or I started the wrong one. And originally our guidance was, and folks heard this in our webinar last week, do not start a second application. But that guidance has changed, so that if you did have a duplicate application or one that was incomplete, those will be eliminated from the system during the grant review process. So, so not to worry about that. Also, we've heard about, we had some guidance change since last week and our webinar last week around whether folks could submit more than one application. And initially we were told, do not do that because you might disqualify both applications if your name appears on two different applications. But we also know that lots of people give generously of their time to nonprofit organizations. And so they might be a small business owner and serve on a board or as a volunteer in a nonprofit. And the current guidance is that you may submit no more than one application in each of those categories. So if you're submitting for your nonprofit, that's okay. And if you're submitting for your own small business, that's okay. But you can't do more than one in either one of those categories. I want to come back to some of the specifics on the application with regard to I've gotten a lot of questions about how do we count jobs retained and jobs created? What's the time period on that? If I had to lay staff off and I anticipate recalling them with the help of these funds, does that count as a job retained? Could you review how people should be answering those questions?
Yes, in regards to jobs retained, we want to know how many employees you currently have now today. If you plan on hiring for the future, you can, under how many jobs will be created, you can go ahead and put that accurate information in the application dropdown. It does give you a number, but we want to know how many employees you currently have.
And what if I'm somebody sitting at my desk now having a heart attack because, oh my God, I answered that question wrong. I've already submitted my application. I can't go back and make a correction. What should I do?
You can email the Lendistry team member email, which is careliefgrant@lendistry.com, and a team member can help make that correction.
Thank you. Is there any specific subject line I should use in that email?
I would just say application. I would just say application correction.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. I am doing a time check. We've still got about 15 minutes, and I just want to make sure that I have hit on most of my questions right now. So this is great. This is really so helpful. So thank you very much. I have one more question, which is that I've heard from a couple of people over the last few days that they put in an application at the $15,000 or $25,000 level, but they got back an email saying, thank you for applying for $5,000. And that's enough to set a development director's hair on fire. So if somebody feels like they got a confirmation for the wrong award level, what should they do?
So I think that's going to tie into what did they put under annual revenue. So it's based off the annual revenue. So maybe that, but Trevor, you have something?
Yeah, so a lot of people are asking this because Lendistry sent out an email with a sample box that shows an application number that is not yours, and it says 5,000. So everyone's calling me saying, hey, I'm supposed to get more than this. And it's not your application. It's just a sample to show you what it's supposed to look like. So check the number first and make sure it's actually your number before you freak out about that. Okay.
Oh, that's a really good tip. Thank you for that, Trevor. Thank you. And last question, I think, oh, I'm sorry, I want to back up for a moment and talk about eligible expenses. This is a lot of people have had trouble with this concept because as nonprofits, we're used to applying for funds that we're going to spend in the future rather than looking back to what our eligible expenses are. And, um, and so if you could talk a little bit about the time period and what is eligible, that would be helpful.
Of course, so expenses should have occurred between March 1st to present, so to today. And so you want to, expenses can be payroll, can be maybe you bought PPE equipment for your staff, mask, and anything pertaining to your business and anything that you had incurred as an expense. There are specifics that will not be eligible to write off. So say for example, PPP and that interest expense, that's something that cannot be counted, cannot be used as an expense for this grant program. Or for example, you got a PPP loan or the EDIL loan. You cannot use the funds to cover the expenses that you use for the reasons that you use for those grant programs. So it can be the same reasons or it can be the same grant expenses you wrote off for the EDIL or the PPP loan.
No double dipping. If you got, if you had a unique expense that was already funded from another source, that is not eligible. But if you have expenses that were not funded by other sources, those are eligible. And my understanding is that particularly if you needed extra expenses to respond in COVID times, like you needed extra equipment, like you mentioned, PPE, extra staff, that those are really within the intent of the funding. And that folks can also include some of their regular overhead, like a rent or mortgage payment, insurance, utilities, those things are eligible as well?
Correct. And we have the application guides are available on the website, so feel free to download that. That does give the specific information, but that is correct.
Thank you. And I'll remind everybody that that's available at careliefgrant.com, careliefgrant.com. For the last few minutes that we have together, I'd like to turn to some of the questions that we're seeing in the Q&A box. And I'm going to just start from the top and roll on down. First question I'm gonna land on is Jack asks how food security is defined, and my understanding is that we don't have firm definitions of those 4 priorities. That's folks' best judgment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. Beverly talks about having had trouble getting through on the Lendistry helpline. And we do have to acknowledge that wait times have been long at times, and folks haven't always been getting the callbacks that they anticipated. And I'm going to ask in a moment if you would review the expanded hours, if you have that information handy. 2 of the tips that we've been sharing is if you ask for a callback, be sure to answer 1-800 numbers, because I sure don't typically do that on my phone. And if you've sent an email with a question to Lendistry, be sure you're monitoring your spam folder. And as that deadline for application for round 1 approaches at 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, Lendistry has expanded their helpline hours. Janet, could you tell us about that?
Yes, so we have extended our customer support hours. And I'll read out loud the number, but I believe Christina put that in there. It's 1-888-612-4370. And we expanded the hours today from Monday, 7 to 11 p.m., Tuesday and Wednesday, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday and Friday, 7 to 11 p.m.
Great, thank you for that. That's going to be helpful for a whole lot of people.
This is Lucy. I just want to jump in for a second and remind everybody that we do have until 3:15 to take questions, and that'll allow us to get in as many questions and answers as we can. So that's awesome that the Lendistry folks are willing to hang in with us for an extra 15 minutes. And then I also wanted to just remind you, Sue, that Jan and I are queuing up some questions from the Q&A box and from chat, even though we prefer to have the questions in the Q&A. So you can go to, we're texting those to you. So we're hearing some repeat questions, and please, if I know you're multitasking, so let us know what we can do to help get those questions asked.
Okay, let me move there for a moment, and thank you for that, Lucy.
Take just a second also to just clarify for people what we at Calc Nonprofits can do and can't do. So as an application partner, we can help guide you get through the process, but we can't get into the computer. So if you're saying something like, I can't remember which application I submitted, we can't tell that. So all those kinds of questions, you'll have to speak to Lendistry about. So I wish we had, a little way we could sneak in there and say, oh, you actually accidentally submitted a for-profit one when people ask that question. But so just so you kind of more aware of what we can help you with, and then what things you need to talk to Lendistry about. Thanks.
Okay. So a couple of things from our chat. We talked about if you were having trouble returning to the application, try clearing your cache. Especially if you were having trouble uploading documents. I'm informed that there are different methods on a PC versus a Mac, and if you're on a Mac, you see open new incognito window, and that doesn't work. On a Mac, it's called clearing your browsing data. So open an incognito window on a PC, clear your browsing data on a Mac. And let's see. I'm wondering, Jan and Lucy, I'm wondering if you can tell me, I know we had some questions about timing of expenses and dates, and if you felt like we got that cleared up for people.
I think so. I mean, just a reminder that the expense time period that we're looking at is that period from March 1st until December 31st.
I know that one of the things also that nonprofits are really used to doing is detailing our expenses and asking a given funder to pay for these particular expenses. So I wanted to clarify that we're looking back at the expenses as a means of qualifying for the grant, but if somebody receives a grant, they can then use those funds as they see fit. Is that correct, Janet?
That is correct.
Okay,
yes.
Great, thank you. And so I know we had some comments about the business demographics are not inclusive of all of the groups that it could be, and I know these are data collection points that Lendistry is required to do. So with apologies to folks who feel that some of them are insensitive, it comes from a different place. It's Lendistry's requirement. And that tell us more question field has been confusing for folks. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how folks should be answering the tell us more field after they've selected one of the categories.
Yeah, so just a question that becomes a little bit more granular of what specifically you do. If you don't see one if you don't see a drop down that relates to your business, just try to pick one that closer to it, because again, we're going to have team members looking at your website, making sure you're a legit nonprofit. So don't worry about that too much. Just select one that closely relates to your organization.
Okay. And we've had, because so many nonprofits are run exclusively by volunteers or are really volunteer driven, we've gotten questions about whether volunteers count as employees. And and once again, if you didn't answer it quite right in your application, we heard Janet say earlier that you could send an email to Lendistry with the subject line, edit your application. But Janet, could you address whether volunteers count in the employee count?
I don't believe so, but I'm not sure. Janet, did you have an answer for that? Jan, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I was typing an answer in the chat.
Yes, that was multitasking. So I'll jump in there and say that we were advised in the past that volunteers should not be counted as employees, and that if your organization doesn't have any paid staff or used to before COVID but doesn't now, it's okay to put 0 employees in that field. It doesn't mean you'll be disqualified. And so let's see here. That bank information still keeps coming up as a question. We want to reiterate that if you haven't been prompted to upload your bank information yet, don't worry about it. If you weren't successful, don't worry about it. That comes along later in the process.
We're also getting a related question. I'm just going to jump in here. A
Please do.
related question that some people are uploading all the other documents except for their banking documents, but then are still having trouble being able to click on their save and close. And then they're also wondering if they are able to, click on save and close, is that it? So then are they done for now? So I don't know, Janet and Trevor, if you could respond to that.
Yeah, I'll take that. So this does happen. And it's usually a cache error. So your browser isn't really accessing the application, it's accessing the information it already has on your computer. So then again, close the browser window, delete the cache and the cookies, and then do it again. And usually that fixes the problem. And the way you know you're done is when you log in and you see that little box. If it says edit application, you're not done. If it says upload documents, and when you click on upload documents, you see a green complete next to every one of those doc categories, you're done.
We've got a question here, and I don't know if you all will know the answer to this or not, but apparently if you got an EIDL loan during 2020, it stipulates that other emergency funds must be used first in paying down the EIDL. Is that an eligible use of funds received from this grant? Or is the answer once again that you may use them as you see fit if you receive them?
I don't believe you can use the grant to pay down the EIDL loan. I don't think it's part of the eligible expenses that you can use it for.
Okay. We also had the question in the past about can you pay our PPP, Payroll Protection Program payments and eligible expense, and we know that that's not the question. So let's see. And Jan and Lucy, if you're seeing some threads in the Q&A or the chat, I invite you to jump in.
I think one of the things that we really like about this thing is that all volunteer organizations can apply, which, as you know, is not true for PPP. But just to reiterate again, because there's so many questions about it, only people on payroll count as employees. So if they're contractors or they're volunteers, they can't count as employees. And the other question, I think that people just are having so much trouble not fitting into the categories, right? And I know that the best guidance that we have from Lendistry is that you just kind of have to pick one that seems like the best. But for example, if you're an after-school theater, what would you choose, for example? Or if you're a hospice, what would you choose? Or you're an organization that trains young people in dance, what do you choose? And so I'm just wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about those kinds of issues.
So in regards to those, unfortunately, obviously we don't have all the specifics that, organizations can choose, but I would recommend just picking the one that closely relates to your organization. Again, for fraud purposes, we will be looking at the organization, seeing if it's legit, seeing if it's active, seeing if it's open or is planning to open, right? And so it's important that you keep that in mind that, we are going to be looking at your organization, because in the application, we do have the section where a nonprofit or an organization will type in their website. So that's going to be extremely helpful to have that available as well, because you typically on your website, you have, the services you provide and the communities that you're serving.
And just on the website thing, so as I understand it, just because not everybody has a website, if they type in their Facebook page there, is that going to be okay for a web where it says website?
I think that should be fine.
Thank you.
We have a question that's probably more of a technological question. Somebody has clicked submit on their application and the little ball is going round and round, and it's been 10 or 15 minutes. Is that normal? Is there something else they should do, or just be patient and wait? What's your recommendation?
Hit refresh, log back in, do it again.
Okay. Trevor,
Yeah.
can you speak up a little bit? People are having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Sorry, just if that happens, hit the refresh button. It'll log you back in. It'll take you back to the login page. Do it again. If it's spinning for more than a couple of minutes, it's stuck.
Great, thank you. Very helpful.
I have another one I've seen quite a few people asking, and that is, if they've left a couple of times, left a callback option on the call center line. We know the call center is just crazy, but should they try leaving another one, or should they just continue to wait? I mean, some people are saying they left two, one on Thursday and one on Friday. Should they try again, or should they just be patient and wait?
I recommend being patient and waiting. Maybe if you don't get a call back after the second time, maybe then trying to call back again. But we have extended our hours, so I recommend maybe calling in the nighttime or calling on a period of time where you feel like there's probably not going to be a lot of people. But I know there's going to be a lot of people calling, so we do appreciate everyone's patience.
Thanks.
We had a question around accounting methodology for purposes of calculating that 6 months of income in 2019 for comparison with same 6 months in 2020. Should folks use an accrual or cash-based accounting? And I'm going to take a guess here and say that you should use whatever you typically use, and unless somebody wants to tell me differently.
Be consistent.
I think that's right.
Be consistent. Okay. Don't cheat by using one method for one thing and one method for another.
It's what you use for your 990. So yeah, most people are whatever you use there.
We have a question about if they're going to be adding a supplemental document, just a very brief one. How do they do that in the upload your document section? Is there like a miscellaneous, or people are having trouble finding a miscellaneous? What's the answer to that?
Yes, there should be a miscellaneous, but if you don't see it, you can just upload it with any other ones. Like, for example, you want to get specific on the grants, on the grants received, you can upload that with your tax returns and just title your document, because we can see what you title your document. So say, for example, you have 2 documents for tax returns. So title it tax return part 1, tax return part 2, and then grants received detailed. And then we can see, we'll be able to recognize what that document is, and we'll open it and we'll review it.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great. I know one of the other commonly asked questions that I get is there a way to look ahead and see all of the application questions at once? Grant applicants are trained to not start the application until you've read through every last bit of it. And the answer on that is no, we don't have a template that we can share, but please go to careliefgrant.com where there's a lengthy application guide that will take you through there. There's Q&As, frequently asked questions, and there's videos that you can watch to show you how to get through the application. We also have a number of questions from folks who want to know, how do I confirm things about my application? How, I can't see it again after I submit it. So what if, oh my God, I had one of those things in the middle of the night, like I'm not sure I answered that question right. Or I'm worried I did the wrong form, the nonprofit versus the small business. And so, so again, I think we need to tell folks that they cannot go back into their applications once it's submitted. But if you are awake in the middle of the night, you can always send an email to CA Relief Grant at lendistry.com with those questions. And
Yeah, I have to just say, I mean, I know you guys know this, Trevor and Janet, but probably 90% of the questions we're getting are related to technology issues, which you've addressed a great number of them here. And, but I just want to make all of our participants aware that there's just a limited number of answers to technology problems. And some of it, I mean, the good news is that this many people are trying to apply and feel confident that they have a reason to apply. And so, again, we can help give you tips. But a lot of these questions are unfortunately things that we can't answer, like, I can't remember what I put in here. Can you look that up for me? Like, those kinds of issues. So just sympathetic to it. And the people are not sure whether they've completed their application or not, and those kinds of things. So just, we're all kind of struggling with those issues. And that's just kind of this particular century maybe is struggling with those this is not like the year of the computer. This is like the year of the computer problems. Sorry. Okay. I know we only have like a couple more minutes, so you must have a couple more that we're not getting to outside of technology issues.
I do. I want to come back to that issue about percentage ownership question. It's true that last week we were guiding people to put in 0%. This week we're guiding people to put in 100%. And it's also true that Lendistry understands no one owns a nonprofit organization, and that both of those answers and everything in between are acceptable. So, one of the questions is, are you cross-checking with the Secretary of State to verify the nonprofit's existence or compliance with California laws and registration requirements?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Again, we've got questions from folks who have completed their applications, heard something today that is different than what they did, and we want to reiterate that you can send an email to careliefgrant@lendistry.com. And so I want to make sure with respect to Janet and Trevor that we've been firing our questions at you. Are there things you want to share with us that we haven't asked or haven't covered today, or you want to reiterate to make sure everybody understands, because they're real important?
Yeah, I think it's just important to make sure that which organization you're applying through. I think a tip that I can offer is that if you are when you do apply, and say, for example, you do have a question in the middle of the night and you want to email Lendistry, you can reference your application number. I think that's extremely helpful, so we can quickly identify you. Your application number is always going to start with DIR, so just keep that in mind. Another tip is that your username is always going to be your email, so also keep that in mind. And make sure you're checking your spam folder for any Lendistry communication if you don't see it in your inbox. I think that's really important to know.
That's super, Lucy. Let's turn it over to you.
Okay, great. So we'll go back and take a look at some slides. I just want to make sure that people know that they've got resources at their fingertips. Again, you will be getting a link to the recording and the slides from today that have Sue's email address and phone number on it, that have the Lendistry contact information. And we're going to try to get that to you today, but we will get it for sure by the end of the day tomorrow. So you still have time. Again, just a reminder that Lendistry's tech helpline is open until 11 p.m. today, tomorrow and Wednesday, and tomorrow and Wednesday it's opening at 8 a.m. So there's a nice big chunk of time there for you to get through to them and ask your additional questions. But also use us as your partner if you like. We've been putting the URL in the chat, and it will also be included in the follow-up e-alert that we're going to be sending you. So you'll have that. We love being able to give you the information that you as a nonprofit organization need, and to customize that to the extent that we can. It also is a way to really show Cal OSBA, the power of our wonderful network of nonprofits. So we encourage you to do that. You do not have to be a member of Cal Nonprofits in order to use us as your application partner. So just want to point that out. We have an FAQ on our website. This is the URL for it. But again, if you registered for this webinar, you will get that URL and link in the e-alert that we're going to be sending you. So you can just click on that. A lot of the questions that people have, we have great answers for. Some of them, you know, there are no clear answers, but we do have a lot of them in the FAQ. And they're also the latest updates. We are keeping every day we get updates from Lendistry, and we put those into our website. So please keep checking. And again, you will get the recording and resources by the end of the day. I also wanted to let you all know that we will be having a webinar on the next round of the PPP. You can sign up to get our e-alerts on a regular basis that will include information about that webinar. And that when you get your e-alert either today or tomorrow as follow-up to this webinar, there'll be a place for you to sign up to get additional e-alerts. And I really want to thank our speakers again, Janet and Trevor from Lendistry, and all of us, Sue, Jan, for asking all of the questions that we've been asking. And in addition, I want to thank Cindy Thompson, our captioner today, and our awesome tech team, Christina Dragonetti and Christine Metropolis. And finally, I do want to let you all know that if you aren't a member, we are a membership organization, and we really encourage you to join. There are a lot of great reasons to join. Again, you don't have to be a member to use us as your application partner, but here on this slide, there are a bunch of great reasons why it makes sense to become a member. And again, we've got this contact information for you to reach Sue directly with questions about your application, and also to reach Lendistry. So with that, I want to thank you and wish everybody a great rest of the day.